Hey everybody, I thought this would be an interesting situation here. Qualcomm, this is unlike some of my previous case studies on Tesla and Shopify and stuff. This is actually a stock that I own. So we bought it a while ago and then it gapped up a few days ago. So let's take a look at some of the things. I mean, what should I be doing now? Well, it's a clear bull market, which argues very strongly that I should remain long. But that the gap could be one of two types of gaps. Well, really, technically three, but there's really only one or two. So there's three types of what am I trying to say? Gaps. There we go. I'm pulling a Biden here. The first one is a breakaway gap, which this is definitely not. The second one is a measuring gap, which is possible. And the third one is a speculative blow-off. So here we have a huge gap up. I know it's not a breakaway gap because it's not at the beginning of the move. The beginning of the move has to be considered, let's say, the March low. A measuring gap is a halfway gap. In other words, the gap occurs halfway in the total bull market. So let's go back to this let's go back to this gap over here. And I'm going to round off the numbers, okay, because I don't want to end up spending a lot of time on math here. But let's say this is the middle of this gap is 95. So I take 95, I go down to the bottom of the gap, which is 58. And now I'm going to warm up my steam-powered calculator. So 95 minus 58 is $37. I add the distance from the measuring gap to the low, that $37, I add it to 95. And I get 132 as the objective of this measuring gap. And there it is right there. There's our objective on the measuring gap. Now, how do you know if it's a speculative blow-off, which is the end of the trend, or another measuring gap, which in this case we would take the middle of the gap here. We would go all the way back down to 58. That's a lot, okay, like $90. And then we would add that $90 or whatever it is to the top of this, and that would give us another big monster objective. So that would be spectacular if it was a measuring gap, okay? All right. A speculative blow-off, one of the key elements of a speculative blow-off is that it has a big spike in volume. And we did have a big spike in volume. Now, it wasn't as big as this spike over here, or the big spikes over here on the far left-hand side. Okay, you got that? Pretty good. But of course, the best speculative blow-off is where you have incredibly monster types of volume. And we didn't really have that. So what should happen is if it's a speculative blow-off, it should come down and break through these highs at 132.42. It should fill the gap and continue lower. And you can see we're already starting to trend lower. If it was a measuring gap, it would usually go sideways and then start to take off again. So preliminarily, we'd have to say that this is a speculative blow-off. Now, the question then is, how should a trader trade it? Well, if you're a super long-term trader, who cares about this? Who cares? If you think that the fundamentals are super bullish, then you should consider carrying this for a long time. If you're an intermediate trader or a short-term, forget day trading or swing trading, I'm not going to talk about that. But if you're a short-term trader or a intermediate-term trader, now we need to look a little bit deeper. So let's go take a look at the fundamentals. The PE is 32. This year, we're looking for earnings to be 59% higher, but next year only 11. So based on just this year, that's 2021, the stock is still cheap, which would argue that it's a measuring gap. If you go all the way out to 2022, though, it's kind of expensive, right? You don't want to pay a 32 PE for a company only growing 11. But we do have green triangles here, meaning that the earnings per share trend is going up. So in this case, as a short-term trader, I would take profits on this, get out, but put a rebuy above these highs, so that if this is a measuring gap, we'll get in, we'll have lost a few dollars here from the high, right? We'll have to wait until it breaks to a new high, and then we will rebuy. But I'm going to get off this video and go sell my Qualcomm here, take a nice big profit. That's a good thing. And hopefully you find this educational. If you do, do the usual. Subscribe, like, tell your friends, all that sort of stuff. All right, everybody. Talk to you later.